Hello, everyone. It's Jaden for Student Pages. I hope I've caught you all doing very well once again. Today, we are here with Andrew Berry, who is the head of Impact and Insights for Young Enterprise. How are you doing?
Yeah, good to see you, Jen. Yeah, having a good week.
Excellent to hear. Very good to hear. So, I mean, like I've just said, you are the head of Impact and Insights for Young Enterprise. To kick things off, what was the personal key motivator in taking an active interest in youth financial literacy, and what is the mission of Young Enterprise in that regard?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's probably helpful to explain a little bit about Young Enterprise for those that don't know. So Young Enterprise is a national financial and enterprise education charity. We've been going for over 60 years, and we're probably best known for some of the work we do in entrepreneurship and enterprise company program, where you can run your own company either at year 10 or year 12 or even at university. So that's what we do on the enterprise side. On the financial education side, we're there doing our best to campaign and support more financial literacy for young people across the country, campaigning, but we do a lot of teacher training and resources as well. So yeah, the personal interest in it is just believing in how important it is, which we can go on to. But for Young Enterprise, it fits squarely in what we're involved in supporting education with as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a fantastic initiative and charity, and I think I sort of spoke to you before we started the interview. It's such an important thing
Oh yeah.
to teach people about, especially in the formative years, because again, it's like what I was actually going to go on to next is about the education system and how there seems to be this gap there in that, these life skills and these very important management skills just aren't taught in the curriculum. So, I mean, what would you say about those challenges and, how to fill those gaps?
It's so persistent. So that's the thing. It's something which has been going on long before I joined Young Enterprise. I look at reports, decades that this has been a challenge, and still nothing gets done. The other thing to think about is it's not necessarily being done brilliantly in other places too. So it's a worldwide problem, and there's a real opportunity for the UK, I think, to push ahead and show what can be achieved if we can get some of these changes made to the education system. And it's really about that. So it's not the important thing that we've got to remember is teachers in schools, time at university, time in college. There's so much pressure on time, time, money, resource. And you're the least popular person in the room to come in and be like, let's teach some more stuff. You're busy enough. Let's add in
Yeah.
about financial education. So that system piece is saying, look, it's got to be working out that if you're going to be doing more financial education, what impact does that have on other subjects, on other areas, on teachers' time, and what the young, any learner, adult or young person, what you can take on board in one reasonable term. So there's lots of factors why it perhaps hasn't established itself yet. But that's not to say we should all give up and go home. I think there's lots we can still do. We are making progress to actually try and break that persistent blockage to get more financial education for all, because that's the thing. We find that lots of young people, and lots of adults, you get the idea that if you're brought up, and sometimes your parents, your carers, your families will tell you about it, good for you, but that's not going to help everybody, and it's got to be something that fits, that it's available for all.
No, 100%. And you said before that you'd seen my interview with Jerome, and
Mm.
we mentioned there that maybe one of the gateways there is to actually integrate a bit of the financial literacy into existing subjects. I mean, I think we did actually mention that one example, why don't we bring these scenarios into existing subjects like math? It's like, why don't we apply the test questions to real life scenarios instead of Bob has 7 apples? Because let's be honest, Bob doesn't need 7 apples, but Jane might need 7 quid. It's like things like that, I imagine, would be so helpful in the wider scheme.
Absolutely. It was sweets when I was, obviously that's the change in 30 years. You've got the healthy nutrition agenda. It's changed to apples now. It used to be sweets. But you're right. It's very much like there's an element of numeracy. And so you were referring to sort of Jerome Mayhew, MP, who's the chair of our all party parliamentary group on financial education, which Young Enterprise supports. So yes, the numeracy side is about having a basis of knowing how to do your sums, your arithmetic, and a whole range, knowing even how things like compound interest work, which is, mathematics in a real world setting. But you've also then got to think, well, how can we put it into context? Now, that can be in maths, and I think you're right. Those instances of not just saying that Bob has 9 apples, but actually it's like, let's go down to the shops, everybody, and let's go and buy some apples. Let's go and see what it's
Mm.
like. How do you pay for it on the card? Do who takes cash? Does how do you weigh those different things and actually get it what we'd refer to as applied learning because it sticks a little bit better that way. You don't have to have a field trip for everything, but you can, do things in the classroom too. But it doesn't have to just be maths. That's the thing. So yes, it could come across other areas of the curriculum. We've seen areas around PSHE or citizenship, but actually any subject, and that's very much what Young Enterprise position is. That's where you can actually start bringing financial literacy into your day-to-day life and realizing that what you learn at school or at university can help prepare you for that rather than just getting there on day one of a new job, seeing your pay packet and being, crikey, what do all these numbers mean? And, how much do I actually get at the end of a week or a month's hard work?
Yeah, no, honestly, I mean, again, it's so funny. I think that I'm doing these interviews at this stage in my life because the things that my guests talk about, I'm like, oh, okay, that's one to reserve. But then a few weeks later, it'll directly impact me. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of glad that I've spoken about this now. For example, the other week, I got hit by tax for the first time in an absolutely awful way. And it was sort of like, okay, really wish someone had told me that was going to be a thing. So, yeah, right. Again, from a personal perspective, I can so see why it's so important to fill these gaps in the knowledge. I mean, I believe, and I'm not entirely sure whether this is accurate, but as far as I'm aware, I think fewer than half of 7 to 17-year-olds are actually currently receiving any sort of meaningful financial education. So, I mean, from your perspective, then, what do you think the government should be actively engaging in to better ensure that every young person leaves school understanding the importance of, personal finance, making informed decisions, and how they manage their money?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as I say, this isn't what I can share is that, some suggestions from Young Enterprises side of what we think would help get that system change that we need. But I wouldn't direct this all at the government because I think that there's lots of players involved. I think very much what you might be not be aware is that from age 7, that's when young people are forming money habits by age 7. So that really, and that's been known for a long time. And that's establishing that you've got to start early. So, in terms of in the primary setting, it's not on the curriculum in England. There's elements about teaching young people about money and currency that is, but actually that idea about how you use money, money management, that's not on there. So I think starting early is very key. I think very much about setting up a pathway. So actually then don't just stop there, actually progressing up as you ladder up through education. How can you progress that so that you're ready to leave education with the skills? So as you say, when you get your first pay packet with tax or, when you're at university, it's not new. You can recall what you've learned to help with that. I think that across the curriculum, I think so. Yeah, we'd support that in terms of if the government was asking, we'd say, well, don't just put it all on maths. Basically, I think maths is a really important subject, but I think it can be viewed more broadly than that. And then ensuring that it's digital. So actually, that we're now not talking. We're recognizing that most people now, or a lot of people, pay for things digitally, and that has implications. You don't have that same visibility. It's all well and good to see that you've got £20 in your pocket to spare, but it's not quite the same if you've got it on a card. It's a bit easier to on apps. Those transactions just happen by themselves sometimes, don't they? I know it does for me.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no. Again, another thing we've touched on is like, when costs come out and you just completely forgot that they're there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's so many places now where you're able to track those kinds of things. There's apps, stuff like that that really helps. But it doesn't make it any nicer or easier, does it? It's like, when you get a charge of £10 just out of nowhere, you're like, I forgot about that. That kind of ruins my food shop for the week. It's like, oh dear.
Yeah, it's like where you see it on the list. You're like, what was that again? Oh, right, yeah, that was that spontaneous thing that I probably didn't need, but yeah,
And again, it's as you get older, isn't it? That right now at my stage, it's just £10 a month or whatever. But I can tell that I'm going to get like 3 years down the line, it's going to be £100 coming out a month, and I'm like, okay, brilliant. Yeah, didn't know about that one.
mm,
So I mean, as as the next generation, then just talking widely, what can we do to sort of help, get the message out there that we want better financial literacy?
Yeah, I mean, so this is it's such a good question. I'm sure lots of viewers are asking. So, so okay, great, it's a problem. So what can I do? I think it's one to emphasize though, it's not just about a generational thing. You speak to so many people of all ages, literally like people who are now retired and they're saying, well, I never learned about this at school, all through the ages. So it's more a case of we're all in a position once you've got that experience of being in work or having to spend money yourself individually, it's more a case of like personal development and thinking, right, how can I find opportunities to look at resources out there? There are lots and lots of resources out there. There's over 100 different types of resources, probably, too many to check at any one time, but it becomes much more about, okay, finding something that suits best for you, regardless of what generation you're in. How does it suit your personal circumstances? Because what works for some isn't going to work for others. The difference is if we're talking about the younger generation who are still in full-time education, that's slightly different because, what can we do? It's a case of saying like, well, how can we support you? Not as a generation, what can you do for your, it's almost like what can the education system do better to prepare you? And then it's just more a case of taking on board and learning to match your own circumstances, really.
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's definitely something to consider, because again, I think there is a lot of talk about, the current generation being so technologically more out there, I guess, than previous. But again, I think you're right. It doesn't really change anything, does it? In the big scheme of things, it's like whether you understand something or don't, that's the be all and end all. It's not necessarily the application until you understand your own situation and how the information that you're actually getting applies to you. I mean, in that same regard, then, just looking for some general advice here, more so,
Mm,
for me doing these interviews. How do you
yeah.
explain complex financial concepts to people who don't have that knowledge? Like, how do you begin? How do you even start to explain that stuff?
I think I mentioned it before, but we have this idea of applied learning. So obviously, when I was saying
Mhm.
before about young enterprise doing our company program, you learn about entrepreneurship and actually, what would it take to run a business? I know. Why don't you try it out for yourself? And the learning you get from actually doing that and being to reflect on it is really important. And it applies just the same for financial education. So what we try and do through a lot of our programs and support is actually give yourself those opportunities to just try it out. So if it is buying in the shop, if it is setting up a pension, if it is seeing what tax returns look like, it's just having those opportunities to just do it in practice because then it sticks a lot more because what the end goal is, it's not just to have this knowledge, but to turn it into habits. So we were talking before, weren't we, about financial literacy? Well,
Yeah.
financial literacy is one thing, but it's a means to an end. And it's a means to an end to actually have good financial well-being, good financial habits. So how can you make that connection to sort of turn the knowledge into something that you do every day because it's a good thing? And that's easier said than done. But I think we've got to work on that first peak first, get people with the literacy, and then actually how we encourage people to turn it into behaviors. That's a bit of a separate drive.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, again, it is just it's the application above all, isn't it? It's how you actually use the knowledge that you have, definitely. I mean, so it's funny because we usually ask, are there any resources or tools that you recommend? But being from Young Enterprise, that is a resource and a tool. So I
Hmm.
mean, who really would you recommend Young Enterprise to if you had to put it broadly?
Yeah, well, this is where your interview with Jerome, I thought he was very wise to point out that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not in a position to be able
Mm,
to recommend financial products or advice in any way, shape, or form. I can just talk about what Young Enterprise does. And so, from our point of view, there's over 100 different resources out there. We've done a really good piece of work with Martin Lewis. He might know Money Saving Expert, and this was a few years ago, and he's very proud, I believe, in terms of developing a textbook called Your Money Matters, which was sent to every school across England firstly, and then also Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland with their own adapted textbooks for their own systems. That's one of the biggest things I think that's happened in the past decade or more in terms of getting financial education out there. And That's publicly available. We can share the link. It's on the Young Enterprise website. Your Money Matters textbook, it's called. There's other ones where, from a looking before the call, thinking, okay, what sort of providers are out there supporting universities in particular and those at uni? I believe the Money Charity is another one. So there's lots of organizations out there, but the Money Charity does support, particularly for universities. And then also there's other people out there. I mean, most of your viewers, I expect, will have a bank account. I think that you can go and speak to your banks, your building societies, your groups as well around, getting some signposting, at least getting in touch with the experts from there who can give that financial advice. Whereas those of us who work in financial education, it's not our role to give that. We just want to put you in touch with the right people who do have that expertise.
No, absolutely 100%. Just making those connections. Like it's almost like that bridge, isn't it? Essentially from a place of having nothing to a place that will. It's like it's less so about actually providing that service, but more so getting from point A to point B a lot of the time. So again, I understand obviously, like you've mentioned, you're not a financial advisor. It's difficult
Mm,
to give advice in
yeah.
this retrospect. But yeah, like just to sort of summarize then and conclude, what would you say are some of the most common financial mistakes that you see young people making, and how do you think they'd be able to avoid them better?
Absolutely. This is where I'm going to go back to that same generation question because I was saying, yeah, mistakes that young people make, mistakes that anyone makes, right? So
Yeah.
we're all in the same boat here, and I think yes, once you've got that applied experience, and which means basically you're a little bit older and you've been there and done it a few times, then you're learning as you're going. These aren't mistakes, but they're risks. I think it's very much about, being aware of fraud, how fraud is changing, how scams and skimming and different ways of people taking your money is a risk and it changes all the time. I think that there's so much opportunities as well. So the way I tend to flip it is it's not just about mistakes but and risks, but there's opportunities too. This digitalization gives a lot more opportunity to sort of use your money in different ways. You've mentioned before about using apps to track your spending. Those are great things that can be done to avoid any risks or avoid any mistakes. So I think it's not so much we're all in the same boat in terms of making mistakes because we're human. But I think increasingly there's these opportunities as well as risks that come with digitalization. But it's just got to start on that foundation, firm foundations for all of making sure that there's that understanding of why it's important and what some of the basics are.
No, absolutely. Just actually have a bit of a head on your shoulders, to some degree. It's like, yeah, but again, we all do it, don't we? It's like you mentioned, we have to sort of make the mistakes first in order to learn, and then yeah, occasionally we can avoid them, but it's not always to be, is it? So, I mean,
Not
Andrew,
perfect. Yeah.
thank you ever so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I think Young Enterprise is such a, incredible initiative, and I just really wish you guys the best of luck with everything you're doing.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jaden. And yeah, look forward to staying in touch.
Excellent. Cheers. See you later.
See ya.